Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today for another Nimble case study webinar. I'm very excited to have Ned Schooler here today with me. And Ned is a Futuristic podcast host. He's a tech industry analyst, advocate, and an international bestselling author. And he will tell you all you need to know about starting a podcast. And he will also make sure to show you how you can use a CRM like Nimble to make sure that you are tracking everybody that has been on your podcast and also how to use it to nurture and grow your network because that's how we grow our businesses. So, with that, again, thank you so much for joining me today, Ned, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Michaela. I really appreciate being invited to host this. And yeah, it's quite an amazing thing, podcasting. But I think, just because your friend down the road has a podcast or one of your competitors has a podcast doesn't really mean that you need to start one. So I thought I'd just put that out there right now, because it takes commitment. Every week you need to really take the time to interview people, but it has changed my entire life. I'm not going to lie. It's been very, very exciting, and I'm going to kind of just give you a bit of my backstory around that in a minute. But before I do, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to go through. So literally, we're going to talk a little bit about personal branding, 15 reasons why you should start a podcast. I'm going to explain how to use Nimble to identify podcast guests, and that's from my own networks, but also from wider networks as well. So that's quite interesting. And also what to actually research before you launch as well, how to streamline your workflow, and best practices for reviewing your progress as well. And we're going to give away, well, thankfully, Nimble have actually been very kind. I think they're giving away a trial of their software, but I'm also going to give away a copy of my ebook as well, which should help everyone to learn more and delve deeper into this subject. So I literally just released it fairly recently. There is a link somewhere. I think it's going to be provided at the end of the webinar. So I think really this is just a collage of some of the images that I've kind of taken over the past 5 years or so. I'm going to go back to sort of 2015, and IBM invited me to go and be a futurist, so to basically attend roundtables and talk about artificial intelligence and kind of this sort of stuff. And they were very kind. They actually invited me to Wimbledon for, well, I've been a couple times now with those guys. And as you can see there over on the left, there's me sitting there. That was the second time I went to Wimbledon. That's actually after I launched my podcast show. And I actually was invited to go to California to go to Oracle Open World, and that was in 2019. And none of this would have actually happened if I didn't have a podcast, because it's given me a whole load more credibility. It's enabled me to have much better conversations with people and actually build some really strong relationships. It helped me to go and visit my sisters. Hadn't seen my sister actually sitting there in the middle there of this picture. I hadn't seen her for so many years, and it enabled me to go over there and spend 5.5 weeks like on a road trip in 2019. It was like the time of my life. And so that's really changed my entire life. So yeah, and I went to LinkedIn to with some friends that I'd actually met online, and I've actually podcasted with one of them. I interviewed her, Melissa Sassy, who's over. She works at IBM, and it was incredible. So I'm going to kind of delve a little bit into how I kind of managed to do that. So this picture here on the left of the screen, there's me there with a glass of wine after I went to Las Vegas with IBM. They flew me out there, and I was only really invited to that event because my personal brand was really good, and I'd actually managed to network with all the right people and it really, really helps to get your personal brand in shape before you actually even launch a podcast. I would recommend that you do that. It's not a necessity, but I think it's certainly quite important. And if you are launching a podcast, you're going to be taken a lot more seriously if you've got a domain name which is actually sending emails from either your personal name. So I have natscooter.com, or whatever podcast you actually have. I mean, I have a few different podcasts, and I'm going to kind of explain a bit more about those in a minute. So I mean, I think it's important to get your personal brand in shape, because you will get a much better response rate when you contact people if your personal brand looks really good. And that involves, having a good headshot. I appreciate right now it's very difficult to get a photographer to perhaps take a headshot of you. So you need to learn how to kind of take one for yourself or ask a family member. But, getting a custom username on social media for your podcast as well is something that is important. And obviously that goes for your name as well, and getting the right sizes for your social media designs and all of this kind of good stuff. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. IBM were very kind to me, actually. They helped me to create this this infographic, and it was really, really nice of them. And it's quite old. You can see it's got Google Plus still on there, but Googling yourself and actually taking a look at what is said about you online is very, very important. So having a personal branded email is important, and obviously having a nice email signature which you can use with Nimble. I actually do that, and just basically taking the time really to just get everything in ship-shape condition, so that when you do launch your podcast, you're going to be in a really good place. So you can see this picture here. I was pretty happy on that day. I was living in Spain at the time, and I was pretty happy, but I found it very, very hard. My life was very hard. It was tough. And when I got back from Spain and from Las Vegas, and I got back to Spain, I actually launched my podcast show, and that's when I actually started. And since then, I've gone on to meet John Ferrara, who is CEO of Nimble, and I interviewed him back in 2019 in March, actually, before I went out to California. And I had the pleasure to go and meet with him, and he explained to me about how he launched Goldmine CRM back in the day. He pointed out the building, and this penthouse at the Huntley Hotel was just around the corner from the beach where we went. And basically he distilled quite a lot of really good information into a podcast that I did with him. And he basically came up with this. I quite like it. It's out of sight is out of mind, and out of mind is out of money, honey. And he said that's like some kind of unknown actress who says that. And I think he's right when it comes to the CRM. I've used quite a few CRMs over the years, and I've found them to be very, very boring to use, very tiring. And like he says in this quote here, which he shared with me, you shouldn't have to work for your CRM. It should work for you. And so what I found very interesting at the time of when I interviewed him in March, a couple of years back, he said 225 million global businesses and less than 1% use any CRM. So basically, if you're not using a CRM, you're leaving money on the table. And that goes for a podcast as well, because you've got to have financial goals behind your podcast. I mean, why launch one if you're not going to use it for work, for your business? I can appreciate you want to learn more about a specific topic, and that's fine if that's one of your key drivers. But if it's relevant to you making money and improving your life, you need a CRM, really. So this is just a bit about the number of podcasts I've actually launched. So I'll tell you quite briefly. So Next Level Podcast was one I launched as soon as I got back from Las Vegas in 2015. I launched my first podcast show, and that was with a chap called Garen, who was another IBM futurist. He's out in Canada, actually, and he him and I, we got on quite well, but for some reason we just decided to go our own separate ways. He wanted to do one thing with the podcast and I wanted to do something else. So he's kind of gone into a more fitness, kind of goal orientated, kind of goal monitoring sort of angle with the Next Level podcast. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Right. You know, like Garen's gone his way. Okay, I'm going to think about it. So I spent a little while thinking about it. And in 2018, in October, I was in my bathroom and I was standing there and I heard these words in my head saying, you must launch another podcast. And I was like, it was almost like my dad shouting at me with like a loud speaker in my head. So I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. Okay, I'll do it. So then I didn't do anything for like a couple of weeks. After 2 weeks, I heard the words again saying, you must launch another podcast. And I was like, wow, really? Okay, I'll do it. So I basically, at the time, I was in talks with a mind power coach, a business coach, about launching an online training platform. So we were going to launch a platform. We did the brand wording work for Build Business Acumen, which you can see is up on the right there. That was my first podcast that I launched myself because my business partner, she decided she wanted to do one thing and I wanted to do something else. And so I went on to launch this podcast on my own. And that was really, really tough. So what I did is I dug out an old episode from one of my interviews with a gentleman called Michael Tobin, OBE. He's actually, I added him on LinkedIn about 2 years prior to this podcast, the Build Business Acumen one. So in about 2015, I added him on LinkedIn. Turns out he actually merged two companies, Telecity and Redbus, and he sold the company for 2.8 billion US dollars. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I've had the privilege to actually spend probably about 30 hours of my time interviewing Michael Tobin and also interviewing people with Michael Tobin. So it's been a fascinating journey. So what I did is I dug out this episode of the first one that I did with him, and the sound wasn't that good because I wasn't that amazing at sound at that point. And I put it on the Build Business Acumen website, and I plugged it in and I put it on, and I was like, oh, that's great. I've got a podcast now. I can relax. And then it got to sort of, it got nearer to Christmas, and I heard the words in my head saying, you can't relax. You need to do more. Like, you're not working hard enough. And it was like my dad. It sounded just like him again. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So what I did is I dug out a couple more episodes, interviewed a few more people, and then I launched one episode per day for 6 days. So I did that in a week in the run up to Christmas on 2018. Then it got to Christmas and I was like, oh, that's great. I can have some time off and relax. And I heard the words in my head saying, no, you can't. You need to seriously work hard. You need to work harder, and you need to do another 6 days of episodes as soon as you get back to work in January. So I was like, oh, you're kidding me. So I went out and I created full transcriptions of every one of these 6 episodes, and I did it, and I launched another 6 episodes that week. As soon as we came back to work in January, I was basically working so hard to get these done. Then on the Wednesday, it was amazing. On the Wednesday, I had an email from the world's largest ebook publisher, and they sent me an email saying, we're launching a series of expert talks, and we'd like you to talk to us about creating some of these for us. So I was like, okay. So I cut a long story short, after a period of interesting negotiation, I managed to get a lifetime revenue deal with this company. And I can't say I was motivated. When I asked the lady, I said, well, how much money is this going to pay me every 6 months for life? And she said, she gave me this figure, and I was kind of sitting there and I was like, I can't say I was motivated by this figure, but the back of my brain times the figure by 100, and I got excited again, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna do 100. So I basically said, well, I tell you what, I'll do 100 of these expert talks for you. And I basically started interviewing people, and I created 90, I think it was about 97. I did try and get to 100, but by the time it got to like 3 months in, I was so tired, it nearly killed me. However, I did it, and then that led me on to basically getting paid every 6 months, and that covers my rent payment for where I live, right? Every 6 months, I'm just getting a payment in the next couple of days. But what I did, I was clever. I turned around, I said, well, look, I'm going to use this content everywhere else. I'm not just going to use it for you guys. I'm going to use it on my other shows. So that was basically what I did. And I got to interview some of the most amazing people. And they were really excited. Like, I interviewed the founder of the Windows Insiders program. And like, you wouldn't believe it, right? So then I basically had a break from the Build Business Acumen show, and I was like, this isn't really working. So I spoke to my business partner, and he said, well, why don't we let's launch another show. We're going to call it Influential Visions. That was the name that we came up with after we'd went through the brand process that I'm going to show you in a minute. And we came up with that name. And now I think we're up to about 65 episodes or so. So then, during that process, then obviously COVID hit, right? So then Michael Tobin said, well, look, I'm kind of bored at home. Like, do you want to like do some interviews with me? And I was like, well, okay, who do you want to interview? And he's like, well, I think we should interview like some actors and some, famous celebrities and football, not football, rugby players, cricket players. We interviewed Stanley Tucci, the famous actor, producer, director. And so I had to come up with another brand. So I got busy with my business associate. He's called Mike too. And we put Positive Personal Power together, which at the moment, it just sits at 20 episodes. But like when you listen to who the people were that were like, it's insane. The people were just so inspirational. It was fantastic. So at the moment, I'm just running the Influential Visions show. Positive Personal Power will probably come back to life, but I'm just kind of waiting to have a little bit of a window, because what you can do if you've got a series of podcasts is you can basically turn around and say, well, I'm going to do a series of 20 episodes or 10 episodes, and then you can take a break. If you're a solopreneur, you can take a break, and then you can promote, and then you can build your listeners, and then you launch another series. And that's basically a quite a good way of doing it if you don't have a massive resource. Okay, so 15 reasons to start a podcast, right? Raise awareness of a good cause. I know a number of people that do that. Positive Personal Power is like that, because we're trying to help people to kind of move beyond life struggles, right? Get meetings with your ideal clients, strengthen relationships, grow your network, build your reach, learn from guests. And that's something that I have really been doing, like learning from our guests, and becoming an authority in your niche. Excuse me, I'm just having a sip of water. In addition, obviously quitting your day job, that is a potential, right? But like, let's be realistic here, yeah? To build a podcast that's in the top 1% of podcasts and gets that many listeners is very, very hard, okay? So actually using your podcast for other things that are revenue generators for your business is a much wiser thing to do. Like, some people, they even record interviews with people, and then they put their branding on them, and then they sell those to the company. So for example, you can do so many things. You can basically create masses and masses of content. Yeah, literally, you can take the audios and turn it into blogs. You can use the video and cut it up and put it into short videos. There are so many things that you can do with a podcast, like find business partners, as I've done many times, and I'm going to teach you how to do that in a minute. Obviously, sell your products or services, but I think putting an ad budget behind it, if you're going to do that, really, really is going to help you. Okay, but getting ad budget from advertisers through a platform is much, much harder. I do think there's definitely a space for customer story interviews, and I do think that people could make money from those. That's most certainly the way to go. So into Nimble, right? So before you even get into Nimble, you need to think about who your 5-star guest criteria, who are the 5-star guests, right? Like for me, if I want to go into an industry and I want to make people notice me within that industry. So let's talk about the cybersecurity space, okay? You can see that there are on the right of the screen. To the left of me, there is Tyler Cohen-Wood, and Tyler Cohen-Wood was the cybersecurity deputy chief in the USA. So what I did is I basically arranged an interview with her as a co-host, and we interviewed the gentleman at the bottom in the police station, and he basically rolled out the whole cyber security units in the UK. He grew it from 100 to 2,000 plus people now, because we are world leading now in the UK around that. So that was how I kind of walked into cybersecurity and said, here you go. And I created a piece of content that explains what the UK are doing within that space. And it was educational, it was fun, it was great. So at the moment, I'm actually working with the lady in red in the middle called Kim Adele, and she was a FTSE 250 board director for 10 years. She's still involved with a number of different businesses as a non-exec director, and we're doing she's an executive coach, by the way, leadership coach. We're doing a series on imposter syndrome within the technology space, because I can't walk away from technology because that's where my grounding is. And then there's Nicholas Babin, who is also a co-host of our show. He actually he launched the Talking Dog back in the day in Europe, and he's on the panel for, I think it's the WEF. And then you've got head of social media Ericsson, Teresa Devanda on the left there, and she's interviewed me before. So that's kind of my strategy on what I do, but everybody is different, and you might decide that you just want to talk into the microphone. So it really just depends on what you want to do as an individual. So using Nimble to find podcast guests, okay? So what I've done is I've basically exported my LinkedIn database. So I exported that from LinkedIn and I imported it into Nimble. It's a pretty simple process. Then I basically use my filter to filter those connections into speakers. So speakers are good because they've got a big presence online usually. This is great. So what you do is you check them out, you go and review them, you look on their social profiles and you say, well, are they a fit for me? Is this person going to be really good? Does she interview well? Does he interview well? And then you're going to basically grab them. You're going to obviously, you're connected to them already, so why not reach out to them, okay? And then you basically just set a reminder so that you can basically contact them every week. And if you look under Laura Gasner-Otting, you'll see that there's a reminder there, a stay in touch reminder. It's not set because I only really set reminders when I want to actually get a guest. Once I've had them as a guest, I don't generally go and stay in touch with them because I do so many different podcasts with so many different conversations that I only really contact them when there is a specific moment in time that I want to actually get them engaged again and do another podcast perhaps, or I might have a joint venture or something like this that I'm doing. But you can see, you can set it for weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, or whatever. And that reminds you to go and say, hey, Laura Gasner-Otting, how are you doing? And she's like a best-selling author, absolutely brilliant, lovely person. She's been on my show a couple times. She's the author of Limitless, the book. So then what I do is I send them calendar invite, okay? After I've reminded them of my existence, I might send them an email, or I might send them a LinkedIn message, depending if I have their email or not. If they got a LinkedIn and they're connected to me, I send them a LinkedIn and I say, hi, Laura, love to interview you on my show. What's your email? Can I send you a calendar invite? Then I send them a calendar invite, and then a booking form, which is really streamlines the process. So then you basically review your progress, right? And if this is working, then great. If it isn't, then you need to come up with another strategy. And if you don't have loads of LinkedIn connections, then you need to do this. You need to go to LinkedIn and you go into the LinkedIn search bar at the top and type in the topic, which I typed in was imposter syndrome. And then this lady, Tara, came up. Then I highlighted her name. And then over on the right here, Nimble says, is this her? And then I click yes, and it pulls her into Nimble. Then I set a reminder, invite her to connect with me first, share a few pieces of her content, set more reminders to contact them, and then I invite them to the show, okay? So very, very simple. Get their email, send them a booking form, which gets them to put their top 3 questions, which is my style. And I check the email tracking feature, which is like the best Nimble feature. I'm really controlling when it comes to that, because I like to know if someone's read my email, right? It tells me. That is the best feature ever. It's incredible. So, excuse me. So what to research before launch, right? Now, this is where you get the name of your show, come up with the name of your show, right? And it's like getting a whole load of words and putting them into a whole bucket, right? And then you basically distill them down into the words that you're going to basically come up with. And what I recommend is people basically go to a Google Doc, list all their interests and topic ideas, because you either want to learn about it or you know something about it. If you've got no passion for it, don't even entertain it. It's not even worth exploring the conversation, right? Go to the Google Keyword Planner, look at search volumes if you have time, look on Amazon, read the comments on the books, make a note of anything that sticks out to you, put that in there, right? And then you can use all of these statements. I recommend you do 5 for each box here. What does it do for others? Authority and credibility. Why is it different? And then the keywords. Put 5 of each in there. That's going to help you come up with your name of your show, your strapline creation, about us section, briefing guests, and everything else. Then you're going to have a PDF that you can send to potential guests. Because most people, if your profile on LinkedIn doesn't look good, right? Excuse me, and your personal brand doesn't look good, you need a PDF to invite them, because they're going to want information on what your show's going to be about. And if you don't write all the information up for them, then how are you going to get them on your show, right? Unless you know them personally, it's very difficult, especially if they're high profile. So yeah, you can obviously streamline your workflow by having a calendar link. I don't like calendar links. I find them very rude and impersonal, but that's just my personal style. I like to build proper relationships with people. I think having a booking form is a good idea. It's literally just a Google form. You send them the link and they fill out 3 questions. They put their social media profile links in there. They put all their information, so you don't have to do it, right? Because everything that you have to do takes time and money and effort and resource. And this is what we want to avoid. So regular questions for guests is really good, because then if they say, oh, I don't have any questions that I want you to ask me, you've got a question you've got that you can send them, right? So show notes are brilliant. You can create them by using an AI tool called otter.ai. It's very good, very fast. Preferably get a VA to do everything for you, and you just show up and they take care of everything. An RSS feed document for social sharing. I built that myself. It's in my book if you need it. It's you can have it for free. Headliner is an app I use for creating short videos. Super cool. So reviewing your progress, send your guests a questionnaire. Also send the questionnaire to your listeners. They may have some great tips for you. review your initial goals, why you started. Review, are you making money from it? Has it led you to any sales that you've closed? Have your downloads grown? What topics are important? And really follow through all of these points here. What are you working on that you've generated directly from your podcast? Yeah. And don't look at this like a quick win. This is not a fast thing. Where are we? We're 2021. This has taken me 6 years to get to this point of actually, being comfortable. Yeah. Because I didn't really have a strategy in the beginning. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to launch that. And it was very, very hard. But I think learning from someone that's done it is very, very helpful. So yeah, get my book. That will really help you. And thank you very much. It's been great. So I think we're going to switch to some questions.
Thank you so much, Ned. This was amazing. I actually love that at the beginning of the webinar, you also shared that the journey hasn't been easy. That you shared that when you attempted to record the 100 episodes, that you got to only 97, and also because it was taking a lot out of you. So I love that you decided to share this to kind of show people that, yes, it's not so simple to just launch a podcast, but it definitely needs to be planned out and thought through, and people need to set time aside to do it the right way to ensure that it's successful. So thank you for sharing also a bit of the personal side of that. And let me switch my slides here. I'm gonna share my screen here real fast. I also wanted to tell everybody about our upcoming webinars. So this Thursday, we are hosting another webinar with Kendra Lee. She's a lead generation expert, and she'll be sharing lead generation strategies that work right now in the current era and circumstances that we live in. So we will be sending invite email to everybody. Next week, we are also hosting a training webinar where we will cover segmentation, group messaging, and custom fields, which can really help you to properly mark everybody in your network with the specific information you want to capture about them, and then use the segmentation to bring up these groups and get them ready for group outreach using the group messaging. And also, as Ned brought up, how to use the email tracking to get the insights on when people are actually opening your email, so you can follow up with them at the right time when they're thinking about you. Next Thursday, we will have Shane Gibson, who just launched a new book that I actually have here on my desk with me. And he will be talking about thriving in a digital first marketplace. And then the following week, we'll be hosting a general Nimble overview where we'll cover the entire Nimble application. And for those of you that are thinking about starting with Nimble, we have a special offer. You can go to nimble.com/offer/webinar30. Nadia will be sharing the link in the questions box. So you can take advantage of the 30-day trial. And if you're already in trial, let us know at care@nimble.com, and we will be more than happy to extend this offer to you if you're just using the 14-day trial. And if you're ready to start using Nimble, you can also use the promo code John40 and get Nimble for 3 months for 40% off. And we also have a great offer from Ned. So again, Nadia will be sharing the link where you can download a copy of his latest ebook. And it's time for questions now. So Nate, we have a question from Shane, and he was asking, what do you find to be the most effective ways to promote your podcast, and how do you most effectively monetize them?
Wow, that's a big one. I think social media has been really good. I'm very lucky because I'm a group manager of the software as a service group, and I think the most important thing is actually getting the topic right. So if you get the right topic, like for example, because I'm doing imposter syndrome, that that has a massive like movement behind it. So what we're doing, we've created a series of interviews on imposter syndrome within the technology space, and we're basically we've created a let me see, it's a kind of get yourself unstuck kind of course. So it's like $97 or something. So basically every single interview that we put out there, we are putting on the website Influential Visions underneath the well, somewhere within the podcast itself. We basically sell our own product, which is the course, which is, you know, it's $97. This is a method that Kim Adele has created that basically helps you to go through your statements, the things that you're telling yourself basically that are holding you back from achieving things. So we're also tying that into creating a book, which is actually being co-authored with about eight different co-authors, and we're going to be doing an imposter syndrome day as well. So those are just some of the ways. I think really it depends on the niche you're in, the communities that surround your niche, and your resource. Everything is about resource. It's about time and effort. And like I say, if it's only you, you need to basically you need to stop your podcast and you need to spend a month promoting it and saying, I've got this show coming out. Here's a link. You can sign up here for it and you'll get an email with the podcast and it will come straight to your email box. And if you can do that, that's going to really give you a head start on getting listeners. But look, this is not a sprint, right? This is a something that takes time. This is not a sprint, really. It's a marathon that lasts quite a considerable amount of time. But I look at it very differently. I look at it like if I can get someone to listen to my podcast for an hour, right, and they are my ideal client, then I've built rapport, and that is worth more than any money you're going to make on a bit of ad revenue.
Thank you. Liam said, thanks, Nev, for a great presentation. And he says, what would be the most important mistake podcasters can make in getting started?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you very much for your feedback. I appreciate that. That's a really good question. I think tapping on the table is really annoying, and guests do it as well. So I think tapping on the table, I think also waiting to get started, right? Like you don't need to wait to get started. You can get started on your iPhone and you can start interviewing people tomorrow. You know, and it would help if you had earbuds or a cord, right? But like you can get started, and that is the biggest mistake, to not start. I hope that helps.
Ira has a question. I have been thinking about doing a podcast for a while. However, the cost of entry, audio equipment, software, mics, etc., has scared me off. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think
What do you suggest?
like I just said, you can start with your iPhone with your earphones, right? However, if you want to have a camera, if you decide you're going to have a camera and you're going to have a microphone, you can get away with spending $100 max. Yeah, I bought my daughter a what was it? A webcam. It was like £25, right? So, and then obviously, if you want to get really good lighting, then that obviously is going to cost you another $50, right? So you're going to spend 100 US dollars, which is going to get you a podcasting microphone that you can strap to your table with a boom, plus a microphone, plus a camera, plus a light as well, and that's $100. Hope that helps.
We have a question from Dennis. He's asking about the ideal length of a podcast. He says they've done 7 minutes, 30 minutes, and you said 60 minutes being an ideal length.
Yeah, I think from what I've heard, I mean, I've talked to some of the people at Audio Boom, and they are the largest podcast hosting business, I believe, that sits below Apple and all the other ones, all the other platforms, right? And the chap I spoke to, he said 40 minutes was the perfect time. I don't think you can really decide on that. I think the most important thing is actually just regular content, same day, every week. They get a notification if they're on your email list, and they get the content, right? And I think that's the most important thing until you come to the end of your series and you say, I'm having a break now because I need to get some more people to interview, blah, 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 and you have a break. But I don't think, I mean, look at Joe Rogan. He's doing 2 hours plus 3 hours, 200 minutes, right? And look at, he just scored, what was it, $100 million deal to work with, I forget which platform, Spotify. So, you know, I really wouldn't worry too much, but not too short.
And maybe last question, how would you suggest people repurpose their already recorded episodes just to ensure that, you know, they are not forgotten somewhere? So how do you do it? Do you have a tool you use to make sure that you are repurposing, or have like a queue of your older episodes that you want to make sure that people still see in their social streams?
Yeah, I think it really just depends on who your audience is. I generally like to reach out to people like one to one, and when I connect with someone, generally I sometimes I actually say, well, you know, they say, oh, I love podcasts, and I'm like, okay, so what kind of content do you like? What are you interested in? And then I'll take an old episode and I'll send it to them, and that seems to work pretty well. But I do think doing transcriptions so that you're building up your long-term SEO is important. And if you can optimize for someone's name, that's really important for all the people that know what the hell I'm talking about. So, but I think there are many ways. I think putting out you know, a piece of evergreen content into your social stream is definitely a good idea as well. So, you know, just use hashtags.
Awesome. So I do not have anything else here. I would love to thank you so much for joining me today and sharing these great tips. I'm sure it will help all the undecided people and all the people that have been thinking about starting a podcast, maybe had some questions. And I will make sure that we will do our best repurposing this content. So there will also be a blog on our site soon with the video recording, but everybody who has registered will automatically receive an email in the next few hours with the link, and it will also be posted on our podcast. So Ned, thank you again so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.